Well, welcome to Life Lessons with Dr. Cunningham, where who you are matters more than what you do. Kindly subscribe to this channel and please like and share this episode. This episode on today is celebrating Mental Health Awareness Month and Asian American and Pacific Islanders Heritage Month. So this is a great episode for you all to follow what we're sharing. I have a great panel that is joining me today. Life Lessons features high-level professionals and creatives who share their lived experience and lessons learned. And thank you for watching today. So just to share some information specifically regarding mental health statistics and the AAPI, or Asian American and Pacific Islanders. AAPIs are least likely to seek mental health services than any other racial ethnic group. And AAPIs are 3 times less likely to access mental health services rather than their white counterparts. It's just a few numbers just to start us off, you guys. We're starting with Dr. Su-Yen Lee Garland, who is a licensed marriage and family therapist with extensive years of clinical experience. She is a clinical fellow and approved supervisor of AAMFT. And Dr. Lee Garland worked at a community-based agency serving underprivileged clients and families in Bridgeport, Connecticut for over 15 years. That's my hometown. So, I make sure I represent you guys. Now she works in a private practice setting, working with individuals dealing with various emotional struggles, including depression, anxiety, traumatic life events, and relational conflicts. She is dedicated to assisting immigrant families, assisting with their adjustments in a new country, dealing with cultural differences and generational conflicts within family systems. And her doctoral dissertation examined transnational activities and their impacts on the racial identity, challenges, and resilience of Asian mixed race individuals in the US. So, Dr. Su-Yen, welcome. And then we also have Sean Kim, who is also a doctor. Korean American, neurodivergent licensed marriage and family therapist specializing in substance use related disorders and ADHD. He has extensive experience with trauma, relationships, and marital conflicts. Fluent in Korean and English. Can I say that again? Fluent in Korean and English. Sean provides culturally responsive care and creates an inclusive space for diverse backgrounds. And I also have to state he's an adjunct faculty member at Southern Connecticut State University, and integrate systemic perspectives in therapeutic approach, recognizing interconnectedness of individual experiences and family dynamics. Welcome, Dr. Sean. And then we also have Misha Shahid, who is currently a personal trainer and the founder of API Wellness. API Wellness is a community-based organization committed to empowering the physical and mental well-being of Asian and Pacific Islanders globally through our shared diaspora. Our goal is to connect individuals in Western countries, USA, Canada, and Australia. Again, USA, Canada, and Australia. We're talking about international here, you guys, with like-minded individuals who practice different forms of physical and mental health. In this respect, our goal is to let folks know that it is not selfish to take care of yourself. If anything, it is necessary. So welcome all of you. So let's start our conversation, you guys. If we can unmute. Everyone get a chance to say hi to the audience?
Hello.
Hi.
Yeah, so that's Dr. Su-Yen. Then there's Dr. Sean Kim. You would like to say hi? And then and then also Misha would like to say hi? There we go. There we go. Now we see Dr. Sean Kim. And then Misha?
Hi, nice to meet you guys.
Yeah, welcome. So I'm so excited that you all are here. And so let's just dive into the questions, if that's okay with you all. Okay, in what ways, from your perspective, is the U.S. honoring AAPI's contribution? And are we honoring enough, just with consideration of this being AAPI Heritage Month?
I hear that honoring AAPI cultural contribution, and I was thinking about like many years ago. I think it's almost 30 years ago. This was when I was dating my current husband, and we were going to Broadway musical Miss Saigon, and I had no framework of understanding my emotional reaction after the musical. I don't think it was much about the music, but I couldn't help myself, the emotional discomfort and awkwardness, and just like couldn't quite pinpoint what was going on until way later. Like it took me probably like over 25 years later. I realized that was about like such a like sexism, racism, and then brought up a lot of helped me to the education privilege. I was able to have that framework to understanding my emotional reaction. So why am I saying this? Yes, nowadays, there's a lot of cultural awareness, try to appreciate the diversity, but still far more to go. And I think as I said, from my personal experience, it took me over 25 years to understanding uh, the, 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 the history of oppression and
Mhm.
also colonization, and so in the world. So
Thank you.
I think that there's a more to go, but yes.
Yes, thank you so much, Dr. Tuyan. And I would like to acknowledge that I also saw Miss Saigon, which is an excellent show. And you're speaking of how media also can portray what happens culturally or people's lived experience. Sometimes media can also mirror that, which is so thank you so much for sharing sincerely. And Misha, I would you like to also respond?
Of course. So I come from a political science background. So I've just finished my master's in political science. So everything that I talk is very like heavily politically rooted. So I definitely think we've made really, really big strides in almost like acknowledging that Asian Americans are just as American as anyone else, which is such a big win on our end. Like just this past weekend, I was conducting a 5K and we had an official proclamation for the town of West Hartford where we're from, where it was like, hey, like Asian Americans belong, like this, it was such a big deal. But then simultaneously, like, I think the only like grievance I have within this is that so much of how we're acknowledged is based on the model minority myth, where we're kind of acknowledged for our exceptionalism. But the truth is like, that's just a myth that like we achieve very high like educational standards or financial standards. So we're only mostly acknowledging the people who are way at the top, and especially our Southeast Asian like counterparts, we're not giving them as much attention, or maybe South Asian Americans, we're not giving them like that recognition. So I think like there's a lot that I know I can sit here and celebrate and acknowledge and feel proud of, that our change makers, community leaders are doing the work and they've done so much. But I still think there is a long way to go before we as Asian Americans can also tell other people like, hey, like even though the Asian comes first, I'm just as American as I am Asian. And if anything, I'm more American than Asian.
Thank you so much for sharing that. Now, well, I would like to highlight 2 points that you brought up. First is the 5K, and I'm literally training currently for a sprint triathlon in San Diego. So, like the running, biking, swimming. And so this is my first triathlon that I'm training for. So I think it's awesome. So I probably need to contact you to consult regarding tips. You're a personal trainer as well. But then I also would like to share or to say, or to ask essentially, because you mentioned sort of this expectation with consideration of the culture, and almost it sounded almost like there's this pressure to perform at your best. And so I'm wondering what that's like with consideration of the culture and that pressure to be the very best, and also while being a minority, and then in many cases could be like a first or second generation immigrant, American. What's that like to kind of have to grapple with that pressure?
It's definitely like really hard, I feel, navigating, because not only through like non-Asian American peers that I'm forced to excel because like that's the image that they have for me, but within like my own domestic life or private life, I feel like I have to constantly achieve and achieve because it's this idea that my parents sacrificed everything. They sacrificed their family, their home, their life to bring me here. And this is the greatest privilege I have. So the best that I can do is make sure that I'm making everyone proud. So there's this almost like constant stigma and pressure to be perfect, which is inherently impossible. So obviously it makes it really hard.
Um,
Yes, and Dr. Chong Kim.
um, I think this is a good segue because in terms of expectation is that, like, for example, I think this is where the mental health piece fits right in because, like, for example, like neurodivergence or something like that is a concept with the culture, it has an innate lack of understanding, right? So I think going back to Misha's point, there is a lot of progress that's made, but then the work that needs to be done that we want to focus on is on the details, right? Like, so there's a broader campaign and more acknowledgement, but we saw our limitation when something like COVID happens, because when people are in crisis, you know, the in-depth understanding of or our ability to, like, I personally had a situation where my daughter came back and the teachers wouldn't watch her homework. And she's like, what's going on? This was in the very beginning of the COVID. Now, you know, having to know that, like, we didn't have a lot of opportunity to understand. And even as a teachers, I wasn't blaming the teachers, but I understood where they're coming from. It happened so quickly, and it really shows where we are to reevaluate and really point out where we want to go in terms of, you know, what we need to bring to the table in terms of the whole movement. And I think this is where the whole mental health piece fits right in. And me as a neurodivergent myself, I struggled my entire life in terms of you know, living up to that expectation when I feel totally different from the mainstream understanding or neurotypical and their academic performance and expectations.
Well, thank you so much for what you bring up, Dr. Sean. Asians are less likely, the AAPI community is less likely to consider therapy. And I'm wondering, how have we made strides, especially because there are more AAPIs who are therapists, part of wellness communities now. And Eastern and Western hemisphere is more so integrating now, even in the US with consideration of treatment. But how far have we developed and how much more do we still need to make strides in order for the culture to feel comfortable with saying, I need help, with sharing what's going on in their households? In order to so that they can access the treatment.
So from my experience, seems like somehow crisis needed to happen until when family finally admit, yes, we need some professional help. So like, for example, the young adult children stop communicating with the family. Because Misha, you talked about the burden and, you know, like a guilty and feeling of obligation and all that. This is too much. And the only way they feel like I deal with it is just cut off the relationship. And, you know, so then parents get really like freaked out what happened here. So, and I had some family cases that adult children say, you know, I'm not gonna talk to you guys unless you participate in family therapy. And then that kind of forced them to seek for help. And that's kind of a family therapy, through family therapy. And also, you know, you mentioned about during the COVID, I've also started to getting more phone call from Asian American clients who's been working with an individual therapist for a long time. But after that, COVID happened, and I think they feel like they need to change therapists. They need to have someone has some cultural understanding to address the racism and their own cultural experiences. So I mean, so that's I see that more younger generation, the positively, they are more open and willing to seek for therapy because there are changes. I think they were pushing, pressuring parent generation, the first generation joined the family therapy. So that's a positive change. But
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Suyan. How about you, Dr. Kim? Your thoughts?
I think one of the things that we need to address is, Asian, just population wise, we're underrepresented, and that obviously flows into. I want to kind of piggyback off what Soo-Yeon was saying, which is, that need to. So if you look at it, or some of us that are therapists know that the trend from psychodynamic theory, where you have to be completely independent from the client, and kind of like that objective thing has been shifting over the years. So the issue with underrepresentation as a population is that when these people, because the trend is also shifting to the shared experience, right? So if I'm a white person, then, then if you're Black or African American, and this is a trend, right? Being able to know and be able to connect the report, the self of the therapist, those of us who are professionals understand how that personal connection is important. But then the issue that I'm coming across, even now, one of the reasons why I feel like working with Misha and how we came to be was the whole idea is that there's lack of accessibility, because I swear I'm probably one of the only Korean marriage and family therapists that's within like 200 miles of where I live, right? Except maybe there's a couple in New York. So when we are looking for the shared experience and then the humaneness in therapy or mental health access, that's scarce, so scarce. So, I think there needs to be more opportunity for us to raise also the providers as well as the awareness, and supporting, like, people like, Misha, and maybe you could kind of jump on, Misha, with what you're doing. But yeah, that's what I think.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing, Dr. Kim. Now, Misha, specifically regarding, because you have a wellness business, specifically for AAPI community or engaging the community. So let's hear about your experience of how you engage them, and is there similarities or differences with consideration of having an approach with the umbrella term of wellness rather than saying it's like a psychotherapy services place, like
100%. So I think I bamboozle people by telling them like, hey, we're gonna go to the gym. Like this is like it makes it almost digestible, because it's this idea of that like physical health is mental health and mental health is physical health. So if I feel like can encourage people to take care of their physical health, right? It's almost like a Pandora box that just opens, where it's just like, hey, like I've been going to a gym and I'm realizing there's a lot of unresolved issues that I've just been like penting up, and like that runner's high or endorphin high is like kind of like really making me like take out all of those like negative feelings. And that's when like I pull out my little card and I'm like, you should speak to Dr. Song Kim. Like he's such a good guy. Or like whoever like I know that like fits them, their like neurodivergence or their therapy style, like, and just like having like a one-to-one conversation with them. That's when I can like take it and be like, hey, like listen, like I'm so proud of you. You're in the gym, you're running, you're doing whatever, but you need to take care of your mental health too, because it's you can't have one or the other. So I think that's my narrative of wellness, where it's like if you're coming to an event that deals with like mental health, then immediately I'm also going to follow it up with, hey, like we should be going on walks, we should be doing something else, or vice versa. If you're coming to an event that's with the gym, don't forget it's thing to be a gym rat, but you need to go to therapy. That's equally as important in breaking these almost generational curses and generational traumas.
Excellent. Thank you so much for sharing. And with consideration of what you're sharing, specifically the connection between the mind and the body, it causes me to think about the difference in the hemisphere of the world, as far as Western and the Western culture, which is very much like a medical model, and then the Eastern culture, which focuses on more spirituality and like energy and chakras, and like, so how do you integrate that within your work as well? I'm wondering.
I
And
think
that's for
I
any
like
of
to
you
give
that,
people
excuse me for interrupting. Just anyone can answer it, also with consideration of spirituality as well. Go ahead, Misha.
100%. I definitely feel like I give people the choice. So in like the events that I do, like there's some like yoga ones, there's like some like ones that just deal with like bodybuilding even, or like a therapy circle. So I kind of like give people the choice, where I'm like, listen, like you're your own person, you have your own autonomy, you're allowed to choose what wellness looks like to you, because at the end of the day, like all of our faces, heights, everything looks different. So why do we think our brains look the same? Like healing and wellness is so different for everyone.
Mhm. Mhm.
Excellent. Dr. Suya?
Well, that's why I really appreciate, I'm proud to say that I am family therapist. Family therapist is developed from the systematic theory, which is in my mind, it's an interconnectedness. It's one element is never separate from the whole. So, I mean, that's why when you see client, you don't focusing on pathology, you more focusing on interdynamic and interconnectedness and the function and role in the family member. So, I mean, it seems to me it's a very natural, like integration of, I mean, uh, Western and Eastern philosophy.
Thank you. And Dr. Kim?
Um, I mean, Norja, you're my professor when I was doing
I
my
love
PhD. So you understand I'm very into this whole idea of unity of knowledge and
Mhm.
combining things. And I think we're in a good trajectory when it comes to this. Models like interpersonal neurobiology is definitely, I mean, as MFT, obviously the whole causal, circular causality and things like that is parallel directly to the yin and yang concept of the Eastern concept and speaks to that. But I think we're doing a really good job in terms of like embracing, which I think like, going back to before, it was such a fragmented model versus now the key is integration. So there's a lot of yoga components, there is mindfulness and a lot of Eastern concepts. However, I think it's still very intervention oriented.
Mhm.
And as far as even for the providers, I think what's necessary is like one advantage of being a marriage and family therapist is that we know how to engage systemically. So it's in kind of in our baseline. So then when we learn an intervention, we obviously kind of flow into trying to look at the mechanism and really understand so that intervention is reflective of our practice, right? Um,
Mhm.
but I've seen many cases where it's kind of being practiced. So I think that's the area. And actually, there's a book I want to recommend for those of people that
Great,
are
please share.
there's actually a great book called Web of Meanings by Jeremy Lent.
Mm.
And it literally speaks to this whole piece about how the whole concept of merging between the Eastern culture and their understanding and wisdom, and how does the Western reductionistic, how could they combine, rather than like competing, but kind of combining them to kind of have the best results or understanding. So I would highly recommend that book.
Excellent. AAPI or Asian American as well as Pacific Islander cultures, very collectivistic cultures. And
Mhm.
yet there, and also a great understanding of hierarchy and a respect for leadership, eldership, age, marriage, that like so forth and so on with consideration of the culture. And there's a part of me that wonders though, because I haven't worked with clinically a lot of Asian American or Pacific Islander clients, so it's not my area of specialization. However, my understanding is that with consideration of the nuances of language, that certain words like depression, anxiety, grief don't necessarily exist. So how do you interact with the family members? Say, for example, if you have multiple generations, one generation that may understand grief, depression, anxiety, readily speaks about it. But
Mm.
if you're working with a parent or a grandparent who still speaks a native language, how do you bridge that gap?
Mm. Well, I disagree. I mean, there is a word definitely
Oh,
in
okay.
own language, depression and
Well, thank you for correcting me. I was because I was told different things.
the question is whether they are freely to, use it, the term, especially negative emotion. I mean, I can only speak for Korean culture, the older generation, the virtue is enduring, not letting all the emotion out, and especially with a stranger. And so it's very much is like enduring, and another word is repressed. So but I mean that's why the through the during the a family therapy session, hopefully I create a safe environment and feel safe enough and then be able to slowly open up and labeling those emotions. And I sometimes do the therapy like going Korean and English, you get going back and forth. Like, so, yeah, this is a lot of, work, energy consuming work. But I mean, it works. I can be a mediator, the cultural, trying to close the gap between
But
different generation and culture.
Yes. And Dr. Kim, please chime in.
I just wanted to point something out. You see, but what we just experienced is exactly, I think, part of how Korea it's relevant to Korea's colonization and history and invasion and political instability, because it actually, Korea, when you look at the traditional Korea, they are very, like, going back to the Eastern kind of wisdom wise, like they literally, Koreans have a condition that's specific to Korean called hwapyeong. It's actually an American medical grocery. In medical term, where it's a, a condition that's specific to Korean people because it came from long time of repression. So Korea has a history with this being able to speak, unable to speak, and they didn't even have a language. They have a king who actually, Sejong, who actually made a language for the nation, because that's like the biggest thing. So one of the first thing we experienced, there's a lot of repression. And like I always say, I tell people, if you don't express, then you're repressed, and you're repressed, then you're depressed, right? So Koreans have this innate tendency to, and those traditions got sabotaged a lot, or like by people who, like different nations, they kind of promoted it in a different way. So there's a lot of unclearness in their culture too, and that in itself becomes an issue even between family members. Like the political like difference between Korean family hold is like huge. Like my father's generation and me, it's like night and day. So that's a piece that muzzling and not having a voice is a huge point when it comes to at least Korean culture.
Okay, so then if I may ask, and again, I'm saying this delicately in order to honor Korean culture, but I'm wondering when working with families, if there's still this sense of honoring each generation and elders, and then yet also wanting to allow each generation to have a voice. How do you help to empower them with consideration of voice and also balance it with respect?
Well,
Go
should
ahead,
I
Sean.
go, Sian? Oh,
Go ahead.
I think I think what we just did is a good example, right? One of the first thing I always try to do is help the family contextualize, because when things are not contextualized, it's personal. And because the expectation, again, I'm not trying to stereotype my clients into this, but a lot of times there isn't an intergenerational understanding or discussion, or it's very functionally driven. So there isn't a whole lot of understanding of who they are as a person, right? Um, so one of the first thing that I try to open up is what kind of commonality or common understanding, or how can we help each other contextualize this? Why is mom like this? What does she mean when we say this? Like one of the most thing is that 90% of, okay, this could sound, but as far as I know, like Korean moms, 90% of the time you would assume they're upset at you, because a lot of times they're yelling when they're talking, right? But then from a child who's born here, I've literally had this issue with one of my clients. They feel first before the nuance and these small things, cultural differences, even in the same family, is not addressed. So that's one of the first thing I try to tackle and see if they could come to an understanding that this is, don't take it personally, because we're talking about the difference that haven't been mediated, even though we are family, because you would assume that would have happened, but a lot of times it doesn't.
Thank you so much for sharing. Dr. Tuyen, Dr. Kim, and Misha, would you like to share or add?
Okay, great. So sometimes, like, a lot of times, like, my younger friends, they'll come vent to me about, like, their parents or, like, their life stories or whatever. And I know, like, one of them, I was speaking to her and she was, like, really, really upset. She was like, I don't understand. Like, my mom just doesn't get this. Like, just really angry almost, right? And I remember telling her, I was like, hey, listen, like, I think sometimes our parents, there's 5 stages of grief. Sometimes our parents are stuck in the denial part, denial of leaving their homelands, leaving their families, like everything, their life behind for us. We, as their offsprings, are the ones working through those 5 stages of grief by going to therapy, by creating art, by doing music, starting organizations. We're healing from the trauma of our parents, which is why sometimes we get really frustrated because we're just looking at people who are stuck in grief over their life, and we're over here like, but I'm trying to like unlearn patterns, like literally get rid of generational curses. So that's, I think, the biggest differentiation that I see when I'm talking to my friends as parents who are just like, oh, my child just doesn't understand that like I work so hard for them, and the child is like, but I'm working even harder. So it's kind of like that gap where we're trying to like argue our parents that I'm trying, but our parents are like, I'm also trying.
Mhm.
Yeah, thank you so much for sharing. And what you all are sharing is so integral with consideration of providing support to the Asian American and Pacific Islander population. I want to make sure that I pause for a moment to make sure that I honor each of you. Like a lot of times when we discuss heritage months, we usually are focusing on individuals that have won Nobel Peace Prizes or, major scientists and politicians. But I also see you all as major figures who are adding to the fabric of the United States in order to make a positive impact, nationally and internationally. So I want to make sure that I honor you here on the Life Lessons with Dr. Cunningham platform because, of you all, there are more people who feel seen and heard and are more open to accepting support in order to improve in their lives. So I'm so glad as a panel that you all are here today. So I want to make sure I give you all kudos. I don't know if I can add a hand that can at least show the hands up to the video. Now, this is our fun segment. So here's an opportunity. Everyone has a chance to unmute because this is kind of like our speed round, so to speak. We're going to ask you all different questions regarding, whether it's like pop culture or, different genres of music, movie, entertainment. It's just going to be fun. So you get to answer whatever comes to mind first. All right. So it's okay for you all to just have fun with it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, I would like each of you all to share who's one of your favorite AAPI singers.
Oh
My God, I can't get
Ah.
BTS off my head, and I don't even like them.
We might actually have to.
My God, yeah, like no, they're not
Okay,
my
singer in
favorite.
general. Who was your favorite singer? Who's one of your favorite singers?
Oh,
Any genre of music.
Asian American would be Olivia Rodrigo. Favorite band would be Stray Kids, which is a K-pop band.
Awesome. Okay.
wow.
So then let's go on to the next one. How about one of your favorite API actors?
He likes Simu Liu.
Stevie Yun, he's yep. Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Excellent. Now, how about name as many AAPI politicians that you know within 10 seconds?
Oh my God.
John
I only
Woo.
know the last name, Kim.
And
The congressman who cleaned up after January 6th.
right.
What's his name? Oh my God.
Kamala Harris.
Yes.
There you go.
Oh my God, you're right.
Yes.
That's right.
Indian.
Wow.
Okay, cool. So then next question. What's one of your favorite AAPI clinicians or wellness experts?
API?
Yes.
Sean Kim.
Yeah.
Ins Kim Burke is one.
Yes.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
Solution focus. Excellent. Yeah. Any
Oh my
wellness
God, you
experts?
took the only one.
We see we have to continue to make sure we bring you all to the forefront, add voice, so then we can include more people. Please join marriage and family therapy programs. Please join
Yeah.
wellness programs. We need more API individuals as professionals in the field. We really do.
Yeah, we do.
Right now, how about any of your favorite AAPI athletes? Any sport?
Athlete, okay. Oh gosh. Who do I know?
Sonny.
Excellent.
Son?
Yes.
손흥민.
Oh,
Yeah, and the
swim.
sport?
Okay.
Yeah.
What was the skateboard Olympian?
Uh,
What was her name?
uh,
Clara? No.
not Natalie. What was her name? It does start with a C.
Uh,
Um,
mm,
I
not
think I
Clara. Not. Okay. Yeah, she was the gold medalist. Oh gosh. Maybe Google.
Chloe.
Okay.
Yeah.
fully
Yes.
Yes. Now, how about any favorite API fashion designers?
Vera Wang.
Yes, she's excellent. Thanks for joining the fun question round. Now, I would like to ask you all to each share how the audience can connect with you online.
Oh,
Let's start with you, Dr. Suya.
well, yes, I have a website. It's easy. lee-garland.com. That's my website.
Excellent,
Okay.
thank you. And then Dr. Kim.
I think now I'm on AAPI, especially in my AAPI related practice. So I think you could find me in what Misha's going to share, I think.
Okay. And so then, Misha, would you like to share your
Okay.
information?
So if you follow us or like look at our Instagram, api.wellness, all like the links of everywhere how you can connect with us are up on there, especially in our bio.
Okay, excellent. And thank you all so much for joining today. Sincerely. Dr. Suyan, thank you so much for your expertise as a family therapist. Thank you, Dr. Kim, for your expertise as a family therapist. Thank you so much, Misha, who is the founder of API Wellness. Again, we thank you so much for what you are contributing to the United States as well as to the world. And we look forward to the continuation of the API community and the collaboration with all cultures, because we are better when we work together, you all. So thank you so much. And to every single one of you viewers, thank you so much for watching today's episode of Life Lessons with Dr. Cunningham. And until next time, enjoy your life. Have a great one.